Hi, Immortal Recaps. This episode another wonderful movie. The film begins in 2013. Deep under the Pacific Ocean, a rift opens leading to another dimension. Through the crack, a giant monster appeared and destroyed many parts of San Francisco. After many days and countless lives lost, this creature was defeated by the human army. However, what appeared to be a single attack was forming as more creatures began to break through the rift, attacking coastal towns around the Pacific Ocean. The world unites to stop the invaders and expand the Jaeger program. A series of giant mechanical monsters aimed at stopping the creatures. Initial tests for a pilot by Jaeger were unsuccessful, as the test subjects were unable to handle the stress and tension of flying such a giant robot on their own. It was then decided that each Jaeger would be piloted by two pilots, their memories linked together in drift, synchronizing their movements to control the giant machines. As the Jaegers begin to work, they begin to turn the tide and take down creatures named kaiju. Soon, the world is captivated by the Jaegers and their pilots. They become celebrities and even have merchandise produced. In addition, dead kaiju are quickly seen as black market goods, with their parts being sold for a variety of collecting and medicinal purposes, even though many of their bodily fluids are toxic and pollute the environment. Serious school. But as the war seems to be moving in humanity's favor, kaiju's attacks become more frequent and brutal. In 2020, 7 years after the rift opened, one of Jaeger's most famous duos, Raleigh Beckett, Charlie Hunnam, and his brother, Yancey, Diego Kladenhoff, have become heroes with his track record of defeating kaijus is beyond reproach. Jaeger's pilots are named Gypsy Danger. They are sent to stop a level 3 kaiju heading for Anchorage. The monster is bigger and stronger than previous Type 3s and will be a challenge for the whole team. Although the information on their screen showed a fishing boat en route to attack, the Becketts were informed that their priority was to protect Anchorage. Disobeying orders, the two still managed to save the fishing boat, but were eventually brutally attacked by kaiju whose heads were specially designed to pierce Danger's chest. During the battle, the kaiju tore off Gypsy Danger's left arm and ripped off a piece of the vehicle's helmet, killing Yancey. Raleigh was barely able to control Gypsy Danger on his own and ended the battle, using the robot's giant plasma jet to kill the creature. Raleigh then drove the Jaeger to a secluded beach, where it eventually crashed. Raleigh stepped out, wounded in the battle. From drifting, the Jaeger pilots suffered the same injuries as their mechanical counterparts, and collapsed on the beach, exhausted and devastated. Mentally before his brother's death. After the attack, Raleigh left the Jaeger program and looked for work wherever he could. 5 years later, he finds work along the American West Coast as a construction worker, helping to build a giant coastal wall to keep out the kaiju. In the 5 years that have passed since Raleigh was part of the Jaeger program, many countries have called for an end to the program due to the spiral of Jaeger pilots' losses in kaiju attacks and the cost of financing. Giant aid. Many people assume that building coastal fences will keep them safe, but program manager Stacker Pentecost, Idris Elba, says world leaders are making a terrible mistake. Although Pentecost stated that the program was still viable, it was moved to Hong Kong and funded for 8 months before the program was permanently withdrawn. Working on a wall near Sitka, Alaska, Raleigh watched TV reports that a kaiju had breached the wall surrounding Sydney Harbour in Australia. Luckily, a Jaeger named Striker Eureka was still stationed in the area before being transferred to Hong Kong and was able to take down the monster. After watching the news, Raleigh was surprised when a helicopter landed near his construction site, and Pentecost asked him to come. Raleigh hesitates to join the Jaeger show again, however, Pentecost convinces him that he belongs in the pilot's seat. Raleigh is then taken to his base in Hong Kong, known as the Shatterdome, where he meets Meiko Mori, Rinko Kikuchi. Meiko told Raleigh that she had studied her movements during her years of acting as a Jaeger pilot, with Raleigh noting that she sounded nervous. Pentecost also introduced Raleigh to two of their scientists. One of them, Drive. Newton Geisler, Charlie Day, is a haunting, kaiju fanboy, who studies creatures from a biological perspective, through salvaged organs and other organs. The other is Dr. Gottlieb, Bern Gorman, a more advanced man who uses his mathematical knowledge to try to determine how often creatures cross the oceanic rift. In Shatterdome, the last remaining Jaegers and their comrades are gathered. 3 pilots: Crimson Typhoon, from China; Cherno Alpha, from Russia; Striker Eureka, just got out of Australia; and, to Raleigh's surprise, Gypsy Danger. However, since meeting her 5 years ago, she has been rebuilt and upgraded for tougher combat. Raleigh asked Pentecost about their plan. Pentecost explains that they are hatching a plan to drop nuclear weapons into the channel between dimensions. If it works, the channel will be destroyed, preventing any other kaiju from going through. Although the Chain's attack plan has failed in the past, the program leaders are confident that they will succeed this time if all the remaining Jaegers attack simultaneously. Soon after, Pentecost reunited with Geisler and Gottlieb. Gottlieb predicts that mathematically, the number of kaiju that cross the rift increases. Meanwhile, Geisler wonders if they can learn more about the kaiju, if they can drift with his brain. After eating one, he was eager to test his theory, but was rejected by Pentecost, who decided to follow Gottlieb's research. Without a brother, Raleigh was tasked with helping find a replacement. However, during a practice and reflexes training session, Raleigh became irritated when Mako repeatedly called him about the number of moves to beat his opponent. Asked why she was so loud, she replied that he could have beaten his opponent with a shorter number of moves. After receiving Pentecost's approval, Raleigh trained with her and marveled at her strength. He claims that she should help him co-pilot Gypsy Danger, but Pentecost refuses. In the end, another pilot was chosen for Raleigh, but at the last minute Mako got permission. The Gypsy Danger test in Shatterdome seems to be going well, until in Drift, Mako is locked in a tragic memory and nearly activates Jaeger's plasma cannon in the dome. After the incident, Raleigh learned more about Mako and Pentecost. When Mako was young, she lost her family in a kaiju attack in Tokyo. Just when it looked like the creature was about to kill her, a Jaeger was deployed to stop it. Jaeger's pilot is Pentecost. Even though she becomes fuzzy while drifting, Raleigh still wants Mako as a partner, but is rejected by Pentecost. Meanwhile, Drive. Geisler hooked up a rudimentary connection machine and latched onto Kaiju's brain in his lab. The strain of the drift was quite overwhelming for Geisler, and Gottlieb stopped him. Geisler reported to Pentecost and his men that the link had given him a glimpse of the other side of the portal. Geisler hypothesized that, based on several samples of kaiju, what they saw passing by were clones, and his view of drift seems to support this hypothesis. Unfortunately, Kaiju's brain was damaged and Geisler needed a newer brain to learn more. Pentecost gave him a small card and sent him to Hong Kong to find a man named Hannibal Chow. Geisler finds Chow, who is actually an American with an alias. Chow is a kaiju scrap dealer, picking them up from battle sites and selling them on the black market. Geisler was impressed enough with Chow's secret room containing living specimens that might be useful for his research. Geisler told Chow he wanted an intact brain. Chow opposes the idea because restoring the kaiju's brain is nearly impossible. The kaiju's skull bones are too thick to penetrate quickly and the brain becomes useless when contaminated with ammonia. Geisler still revolves around Chow's arrogant and questionable attitude, saying he could use the kaiju's secondary brain instead. He mentions he's been drifting with kaiju brains, making Chow wonder if he's connecting to the other side. What about the people on the other side who don't know what he knows now? Chow reveals that he has also drifted with kaiju brains and as a result his left eye is permanently injured and risks aliens could send any kaiju to find him in the city. Soon after their discussion, 2 Type 4 kaiju emerged near Hong Kong. Pentecost sends the Crimson Typhoon and Cherno Alpha to battle the creatures, with Striker Eureka as a backup to protect the city's coastline. Just when the discussion seemed to indicate that the kaiju were becoming more dangerous, the two appeared equipped with additional equipment. One has a pouch in its throat containing acid that melts Cherno Alpha's armor, rendering it severely disabled. The Crimson Typhoon crew takes her into battle, but she is quickly overpowered by one of the kaiju, who uses his clawed tail to rip off the skua's head. Cherno was attacked by the larger of the 2 kaiju and was defeated when they were forced underwater and the monster crushed their reactor, causing both pilots to drown. The father-son team that controls Striker Eureka abandons orders to protect Hong Kong and goes after the creatures. However, the other kaiju releases an EMP explosion that disables the Striker Eureka and Shatterdome devices. With 2 hours until the system could restart, Striker Eureka was dead underwater until Raleigh came up with a solution. Although the newer Jaeger models are digital, the Gypsy Danger is analog and therefore more resistant to EMP attacks. Pentecost dispatches Raleigh and Mako, who finally destroy the EMP-equipped kaiju after a long battle, but the others head to Hong Kong. As Chow and his associates fled to their bunker, Drive, Geisler was thrown into the street by Chow to hide in a public shelter. However, when it appeared the creature had settled right on top of them, he began to panic that Chow might be right and might be looking for him. As if answering that the ceiling was collapsing and kaiju was trying to reach it. Just then, Gypsy Danger appears and distracts the kaiju. The battle goes through many buildings and Gypsy can freeze and break the creature's tail as well as tear its acid bag. However, the battle turned in another direction when the creature suddenly sprouted giant wings and began carrying Jaeger into Earth's upper atmosphere. Using a new weapon, a large chained sword, they managed to destroy it before returning to Earth, barely regaining control of Jaeger as a team for a safe landing. Raleigh and Mako returned to the Shatterdome to cheer as the Eureka pilots also expressed their thanks and appreciation. While rejoicing, Raleigh noted that Pentecost was bleeding lightly from both nostrils. Privately, Pentecost explained how in the early days of the Jaeger program, protection from nuclear contaminants was not considered and his condition worsened over time. Meanwhile, Geisler went back to Chow and asked to retrieve the dead kaiju's secondary brain. Chow's men tried to get there, but found it damaged and useless. However, they also discovered that kaiju was indeed pregnant before their connection to Chow was lost. Just then, a baby kaiju punches a slit in its mother's side and tries to escape before falling over, apparently choking on its own umbilical cord. When Chow gloated over kaiju's death, declaring that he knew he couldn't stay away from his mother for long, the creature sprang up and swallowed him, eventually dying on the street. Gottlieb soon shows up in Hong Kong with Geisler's machine, and though the first attempt nearly kills him, Gottlieb volunteers to go with the other scientist, collaborating to learn more through the brain of the baby kaiju and dealing with the stress of the experience together. Plans were soon made to execute Gypsy Danger and Striker Eureka to deliver the warhead to the underwater rift. With his father unable to fly the Striker due to a broken arm, Herc Hansen was left without a comrade. Pentecost surprised everyone by taking on the role. However, the stress of driving a Jaeger can be fatal at Pentecost, but he still volunteers. As the two Jaegers near a rift, Geisler and Gottlieb rush into the Shatterdome control room and explain that the plan will not work. The channel between dimensions will only allow kaiju, the main reason for previous failures to destroy the channel with other nuclear weapons. If they tried to drop the warhead into the channel, it would deflect through the hole. The two Jaegers battled two Level 4 kaiju to protect the rift when a third, Level 5 kaiju, larger and stronger than the previous creatures, appears. Gypsy Danger and Striker Eureka take heavy damage in battle. Unable to deliver the bomb, Eureka attacker detonates it to eliminate the kaiju defender and give Gypsy Danger a chance to enter the rift. Once inside, Raleigh and Mako will detonate Gypsy's nuclear reactor and destroy the crack. Gypsy attaches herself to a Type 5 kaiju and with it falls into the rift, bypassing the code that rejects any non-kaiju. Inside kaiju dimension, Raleigh pushed Mako into a life capsule and manually triggered the nuclear core explosion. As the wandering Danger entered another dimension, Raleigh leapt out of her own capsule before the Gypsy Danger exploded and broke the rift, ending the kaiju threat once and for all. On the surface of the Pacific Ocean, both shells rise to the surface. For a short while, it appeared that Raleigh was dead, but he did wake up, much to Mako's delight. A mid-credits scene reveals that Hannibal Chow survived being swallowed by the infant kaiju with a pocket knife. He angrily asks where his lost shoe is. Thank you for staying with us. Remember to subscribe to our channel. See you in the next episode.